Hello everyone, my name is Zach and welcome to On Cash Flow, where I help you become a master of your own cash flow. Now let's get started. Today I want to talk about my first rental property. This is pretty much the first video where I'm going to be talking specifically about my real estate investing, because up until the point where I became financially independent and I stopped my W-2 pursuits, I had only invested in stocks and bonds at that point, only on the stock market. But after being retired for about a year, I ended up investing in real estate. And I'm not going to get into exactly how I made it happen, without a W-2 job in this video. But what I am going to do is I'm going to go over my very first property, because now I have a couple of years, behind me. And so I can discuss these numbers with you, in a broad sense. Now, these numbers are going to be mostly rounded up or rounded down. So they're not going to be exact, but they're going to be pretty darn close. So let's get into it. So this is my very first rental property. And this is basically the image that I saw when I first bought it. So this image was before anything was done to it. And actually, the outside actually pretty much looks pretty similar now. But you can see before, when I bought it, it was a 2-bedroom, 1-bath house, and it was 828 square feet. So a pretty small house. And the primary strategy that I have been pursuing in real estate investing has actually been renovating basements that are unfinished and making them finished, and essentially almost doubling the square footage of the house. So that's why I have right here in the after column, we made it a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. We added 1 bathroom downstairs in the basement and also made another additional bedroom down there. And we essentially doubled the square footage. Now let's dive into the fun part, which is the numbers here. All right, so here are about the numbers and the timeline that I had for this first property. So this first property was purchased in July of 2022. The listing purchase price was for $137,000. I know, you're probably shocked looking at that. I am too. As you may know, if you've ever purchased property, you have costs that are in addition to that. So the closing costs here were $5,280, and we had to put 15% down for this property. So our down payment was 15% of that $137,000, which is $20,550. So I put right here the acquisition cost at $25,830. So basically we had to have at least, at a bare minimum, $25,830 to acquire this property. Now I actually want to show you a more in-depth version of closing costs, because a lot of what you'll hear when you hear about closing costs, especially when it comes to like real estate investing, is just a general percentage, like, 3% to 4% of your purchase price. I'm going to actually break it down for you, because this was something that I had a hard time finding out, because there are so many things that go into closing costs and it can be kind of confusing. So I want to share some of mine with you. So right here we have the closing costs, and this was taken actually straight from my settlement statement. Right here we have the loan origination fee, $1,165. The appraisal was $560. The inspections, this was a pest inspection and a general house inspection, $510. There's some other miscellaneous loan fees that are attached to that, $35 in that. And then we had to prepay insurance for a year, $463. And yeah, I'm pretty shocked by that number too, because insurance is definitely not that low anymore. And that was 1 year of insurance. Then we had to put in $516 of escrow reserves. Basically goes into an escrow account, and that's supposed to be like an initial buildup for property taxes and insurance in the future kind of thing. And then for title fees, $675 of total title fees. And we did purchase title insurance, and we have to purchase title insurance for the bank. And we also decided to purchase our own title insurance, $560 for both of those. And then these are the taxes, basically government recording taxes for transferring the mortgage over and the title and all that good stuff. $796. We add all of those up, and our total closing cost was $5,280. And of course, you can say that all of these aren't exactly closing costs initially. Like the prepaid insurance is for a whole year, so that gets spread out. The escrow reserves also is going to be spread out over time. But this is still money that needs to come out of your pocket initially when you purchase the property. So $5,280. At a purchase price of $137,000, the percentage of closing costs was 3.9%, so almost 4% in closing costs. So you can kind of gather that when you're purchasing a property at a lower price, the percentage of cost, like the percentage of that purchase price in closing costs, is probably going to be higher, versus if you were purchasing a house that was 3 times that much, your closing costs probably most likely aren't going to be closer to 4% when it's a house that's more expensive, for example. So let's go back to the regular one here. All right, so I have that was our total acquisition cost of $25,830. And with that, the mortgage that we got with this property was an 85% of the purchase price. So that was $116,450. Our rate at the time, and rates were starting to go up at this point, 5.75%. Of course, they're always going to be a little bit higher for a rental property rather than a primary residence. And our total monthly mortgage was $1,036 per month. And that initially included principal, taxes, insurance, and all that good stuff. So that was the total payment there. And so after we purchased this property, we had to come up with additional money because it's not ready to rent at that point for what we were trying to do. So we renovated the entire basement out, and we got really lucky on this property because actually the basement was like partially renovated. Like someone started to renovate it. They framed it out basically. And so this was a much lower cost rehab for our first property. We got that at about $25,000 it cost us to rehab that basement and of course do some other stuff around the house too to make it nice. And during that time, of course, while it's getting renovated, you have holding costs. Basically, you're gonna have to pay for that mortgage while it's there. You're gonna have to pay for utilities and such like that. So I gave us a good little estimate for 2 months of mortgage and $100 a month for utilities and miscellaneous expenses. And so that's how I got to that number of $2,272. So I add up all of this. I add up my acquisition cost and I add up the rehab cost plus the holding costs. And that is the total amount of cash that we had to have in order to basically get this house renovated and ready to rent. So $53,102. That's approximate, of course. That just goes to show that if you're going to invest in rental property, you're going to need a pretty large amount of money, depending on what your strategy is. But I think our strategy is, a pretty basic strategy, and it required, over $50,000 up front just to get started for one property. But I think it really did pay off because we built a lot of equity into the home. As you can see right there, about 1 month later, we got it rented out at $1,500 a month. And we got it reappraised so that we could do a cash out refinance because that was our primary strategy. So the ARV for this property got reappraised at $186,000. And that was back in September of 2022. I haven't had it actually reappraised since then, but I do have an estimated value that I like to keep in mind. So let me show you that. Okay, so here I have a screenshot that estimates like the median price per square foot in the area. So it puts it at $174 for that zip code. What I did was I took the square footage of the home. You can multiply that by the square footage estimate, which is $174 per square foot in that area. And what I did is I actually adjusted it down by 25%. Basically, I'm taking 25% off of that 174. So that's why we have the new price per square foot of 131. And then I multiply the square foot by the 131, and that gives me my estimated value for this home at about $216,000. So that's what I estimate that the home is worth approximately today. With that cash out refinance, after we did that and we've been paying a little bit towards the principal, been paying it off a little bit, the current mortgage as of today is $152,000. So we subtract the current estimated value by the current mortgage, and I estimate we have about $64,000 of equity in this property, which would put our loan to value at 70%. Remember when we first purchased the property, we purchased it at a loan to value of 85% because we put 15% down and the remainder of that was in the mortgage, 85%. But now as of today, I believe it is closer to 70%. And the rent has gone up a little bit. We currently have it at $1,590 per month. Rather, it started out at $1,500 per month. As of today, the vast majority of our, as you could say, return on our investment for this property came from that forced appreciation and regular market appreciation. And we were able to, take out cash, do a cash out refinance, and basically have that to deploy into property number 2, which I will be talking about in another video. So stay tuned for rental property number 2. But before you go, I just want to say really quick, if you have anything in your life, in your personal financial life, that you may need a second set of eyes on, I would love to try to help you. What you can do is you can go to oncashflow.com/consult. And on there, I have a bunch of information for you to look over. You can go on there and see if you want to book a consultation with me. I would love to try to help you out with anything that I can. Thank you so much for watching this video. I'm Zach from oncashflow.com and hope to see you next time.